this one, I wanted to speak to you over like anyone who's kind of like off doing freelancing and that sort of stuff. I think, you know, especially with like lockdown and people being stuck in, and kind of like being bombarded with that sort of be your own boss and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. And I know you tried freelance bits and you've worked agency side for a while, so I think it'd just be good to like get your background and your thoughts on everything really.
Yeah, obviously, for me, I've been in digital marketing over 15 years, so I've seen it all from small to large. I've been started off actually as a travel agent before that, and that's how I got into digital marketing because we hired an SEO agency. And around that time, because I was in it was a good paid job for my age, but I started to do web design on the side because that's something I'd learned as a new skill, and never really got to the point where it could pay bills. And then, you know, when the opportunity came, I got into an agency side, so that's what I went from, obviously non-digital marketing related, but working as I suppose in-house, but very loosely. But then what I thought, it was time to take the sort of leap and go agency side, and got into an agency. And for that 3 years, I went from a junior SEO to, you know, operations manager of an SME business, basically, which really helped cut your teeth with getting to know customers, getting to know how it works agency. And from that, you sort of hone your skills. So I started off very technical. You know, as a technical SEO. Still, that's my bread and butter in terms of my skill set. But over those following years, going into the next size agency, working on clients, you know, £1 million budgets that you manage in a month, and then to managing teams of people, 12 to 15 in your team, you get different challenges. But all along that, you know, working through different agencies, becoming head of SEO, head of digital marketing, even more recently going into the medical side of things when I worked in that vertical. You learn a lot more, but underpinning it all, the key thing for me is keeping your hands in on the stuff that you don't do day to day, that you may do when you first cut your teeth in an agency, let's say. So you've got your skill set, you understand what you're doing, but when you become more senior and you're running teams, you're not doing the do. Yeah. So that's where the freelance side of things for me, it's an interesting area that I've always looked at, never really committed to because of family and having the responsibilities. But I still maintain a level of freelance with different parts than the day job. So rather than doing a 9 to 5, doing the thing you do every day, then going home and doing it again, you know, it can become a bit laborious. So turning your arm to other things, so still being involved in web design projects, look at bits of PPC, consultancy is a good one that you can work with. So in a nutshell, it's it can be tricky to try and maintain that work-life balance.
Yeah.
In that sense, and freelance work is great, and obviously you know you've made a success of what you've gone on to do with working with you at Push On for those years. Obviously, when you first come in and we interviewed you, it didn't last long, the interview, because we knew straight away you were smart enough, you knew what you're talking about, and you know, coming through that MMU experience, we knew straight away, yeah, we can employ you. And then since those years, you know, you've gone on and got yourself featured in the evening news. And,
it's called digital PR.
It's a testament to hard work because, as you know, part of this, what we're discussing, it's having the day job and freelancing.
Yeah.
The day-to-day pays bills.
Yeah.
The freelance helps get to where you need to be if you're not quite, you know, getting what you need from a day job. And that's not a bad thing sometimes, you know, some salaries are salaries. But you've gone out there, you've researched a, you know, marketplace, and you've understood where you can get your clients from, where those clients can become more regular. And then, you know, you took the leap. And so far, obviously, coronavirus times are hitting everyone differently. But taking that leap to do that and being your own boss, you know, it's a bit different in your version of being your own boss to my version of being your own boss, because I still have a boss, but I'm working at home. You've got to structure your day. If you don't structure your day, and you don't know how long you're spending on time. You could end up doing 10-hour days easily.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, when you're your own boss, as in your own business, if you don't work, you don't get paid. It's as simple as that. So you've got to make sure you're still taking the time to do the work, but do it so you've still got, you've got breathing space around it. And I think that's where running your own business, I've sort of done it a little bit, but not to the extent where it's my sole income, which is, like I say, it's testament to how you set that up and how you got yourself going. And I think one of the things, like talking to myself, and I know the chats you've had with other people, it's keeping in touch with those people that that can offer you advice, offer help.
Yeah.
And also, when you do, like me, I have moved around a few agencies over the years. It's careful that you don't burn bridges, because you might need a favour somewhere along the line that person's there to give you that leg up or that piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the same whether you're doing freelance or going from agency to agency. It's a very small industry, no matter how large it might seem, and everyone knows everyone. So obviously, if you're in a good position and you're not an arsehole, then you probably won't struggle to go, from one place to another if it's justified.
You can even work, if you've had. I've seen people that have had, they've moved on because they've not worked. It's not worked for them, or they've not worked well with the places they work. But after years, because they've not, they parted on reasonable terms. Let's say they've moved on somewhere else. If you don't burn that bridge, you can still be, again, work's work. Outside of work, those people, you've struck friendships through. So, like you say, this industry is very small and everyone does know each other. So you don't really want to be one of those people that burns bridges, and then at any event you go to, you can't speak to anybody because you know that wildfire that you've been another.
Brighton SEO be a bit shit, wouldn't it?
Yeah. In the corner on your
own. So what would your because I'm usually asking people advice about like what would they say to someone, if they wanted to start a business or whatever. But I think the way that you've gone about things, like building up your experience within agencies, it's probably very similar approaches. So if someone is watching this who's like where I was 3 or 4 years ago as like an exec, like what would you say to them if they wanted to kind of be in your position where they're actually leading teams?
Yeah, it's first and foremost, it's hard work. You've got to put the hours in and put the graft in. And the way I sort of approached it, my first role as an exec, it's learning the ropes. It's understanding how things work. And for me, obviously, I did have a tech background, so that helped me straight away to have carve into a niche that's part of that.
Yeah.
Well, then it's about your ambition. How you want to, if you want to get to be, the head of a department, or head of a marketing department, or head of SEO, or it's achievable. I mean, I knew nothing really about digital marketing 12 years ago. I was playing at it for a travel agent. We were doing well, from a small travel agent point of view, because I was learning off the agency that I was working with. So they would provide me the recommendations. I would, really be a good customer if, without being too brown nosy to your businesses, but getting those changes made really quick. So straight away I was back at the agency saying, right, give me more, because what else can we do? And in a way, that's a bit how you can approach that in an agency. If you come in, from, let's use as a case example, you come in from university, you've studied digital, and, you've worked and, you've done work experience and placements and things like that within an agency. So you start to get a feel how it works. And obviously you had a lot of support from the university to get you placed. But if that's the case, like a, post-grad role or something like that,
yeah,
it's understanding really in your mind what you want to do. How can you get yourself out there to be spotted? In knowing the right people is, in your case, coming from MMU with Dave, championing that sector of people that he's pushing through the university, because you work hard, you get into places, and then it's about once you're in, it's learn your craft. If it's SEO specific, I can talk about that from my experience. Reading everything, blogs, newsletters, getting as much sort of information into your mind that really helps you, and then start to understand, like, a lot of the tasks I was doing, to start off with, was keyword research, checking websites, looking, because I had a technical background, it's looking at, again, how the fundamentals of the website work. So at that point for me, even though I was in an agency doing SEO, I was still doing, I call it web design, it wasn't quite web design, but working with websites. So I was still looking at code, and because I understood that when I got a client that then, say, had a code issue, I already knew it because I was still doing it outside of the day-to-day. And that really helped. And then it's a case of then to progress. It's knowing, I was fortunate that I became a strategist within about 12 to 18 months, just working hard and working with your colleagues and learning off them, and, looking at who is in that role, like, the head of SEO where I was. I had 2 at my time in the first agency. And it's just looking at what they do well. You can take those traits on, and try and work as hard as you can to get your head down, work hard, get that first sort of 12 months under your belt. I mean, experience from yourself, obviously. I managed you, from start to finish at my time at Push On, and it's the willingness to learn and do is 2 key attributes. The knowledge can come. That's you don't have to employ someone who is fully skilled at one thing if you want them to actually develop into what you want them to develop into, to give them that leg up.
Yeah.
Pushing them, push yourself down a route of hard work is the first and foremost. And like I say, understand the subject matter that you want to be in. Because you could be a head of a content department, you could be head of social department, you could be a head of technical SEO, you could be a head of the whole thing. It doesn't necessarily, you're not restricted in, you have to aim for the top and there's a glass ceiling. That's how it worked for me. A position opened within the agency where I could become the operations manager for that product. So internally, there was 3 of us went for the interview, and I was fortunate enough to get the role, which then helped me, help me then manage smaller budgets, but actually managing an actual process, a product.
Yeah.
So, that's when you can then fine tune your skills into managing people, managing a product, managing clients. And at that point, that gave me the opportunity then, when another agency came in for me, I could get that next step up. So the next step in my career, if it's not always the case, you can stay start to finish in a business and you become the MD. That's it's not always the thing that'll happen, but your next step of that progression could be to move agency. So that's, as you mentioned, I've learned and grown my knowledge base and experience by taking the opportunities when they arise, and if it's the right thing, then not to turn it down.
Yeah.
And then moving into that next agency, that's when it became working with large clients, larger budgets, larger teams, different people. It was a media agency, not just an organic or a digital agency. So you're dealing with people that are doing offline as well as online. So again, that's how do those 2 worlds collide, to work and honing your skill set there. So from doing the day-to-day into managing a product, then managing a department almost, that's when, again, your skill set changes. And that's how you can, I suppose that's how my path went to that point with getting the skills, because people management is a completely different skill set compared to just doing work management. You've got to understand people. Agencies of certain sizes, well, all sizes really, I suppose it's unfair to smaller agencies compared to bigger agencies. It's working, training you to how to manage, how to deal with people, because getting the best out of somebody isn't always, like you see some companies where it's like, why have you not done that? That's never going to get productivity up, So it's how to deal with every different person, really, different traits. Some people have a better work ethic, some people work harder, some people don't. It's how to understand how to manage that.
So do you think, say for someone starting out now, I don't know if it's different from when you started, but would you recommend going for like a larger agency where you are looking at all the different pieces of the puzzle, or for something more specific? Like, let's say for me starting at Push On, it was a little bit trial by fire because you're going straight into, you're giving clients from the get go almost. Whereas obviously with like these larger agencies, yes, you are kind of seeing little bits of everything, but then you run the risk of being like, right, you're the keyword research guy, and that's what you do every day. It's that kind of payoff.
Yeah, I think from my own experience, you want to do as much as you can, but too many things can cause you problems because if you don't understand one thing over another, you don't want to be given that. Oh, that's the only job that person can do, so we'll just get them doing that. That's about broadening your mind and your skill set. I think in answer to the question, sort of how to approach it, from like if you could have the pick of agencies, small, medium, large, it is almost like a catch-22. You get massive experience in a big agency because you're going to be dealing with huge clients, huge teams, potentially. But you could almost become the little bit pushed out in the corner because you're the one that's new. You've not got the knowledge, let's say. But you could go into a smaller agency where you're going to be more hands-on, and that could still cause you a problem because you might be given too much of things you don't know how to do properly, which can be detrimental to your work. So it's almost both can work depending on obviously the integrity of the agency you go into. There are some agencies that you might not be treated well, and that comes across all sizes. It doesn't matter which, small, medium, large. Some agencies just don't. They're just a machine, just want to profit. Now that's not the case for me. I like to work with people. So if it was an example of me employing somebody who's new, I'd be looking at, like, say, do they look like you're going to work hard? Do you understand the basics? Let's put it there. You've got to have some form of, you understand what you need to do, but also nurture. A good boss or good head of department or head of piece of work you're doing. It's nurturing to make sure that if things you're not going to get it right first time, it's then okay. So this is what you did, and this is how I think you probably recognise how I manage with you. You've done something. We'll look at it. If I think we need to make a change, it's to actually discuss why, not just do it. Sometimes you've got a deadline and it has to be done, but then afterwards it's take a sit down and go, right, this is why we changed the title, this is why we did the copy had to change in this way, and this is how you then learn for your next one that essentially, in the next 3 pieces worth of time, that'll come into someone to peer check the work and it'll be, oh, that's great, let's just send it on.
Yeah.
And that's all about it's all about how you approach it. If you're just doing work for 9 to 5, getting paid, that's it. And that's where I really like to, with yourself, you were doing that, the outside of work, learning as well. You were still doing stuff and getting involved. And there's plenty of people that have managed over the years that put the yards in both, not just clocking off and walking away at 5 o'clock, going home and reading more blogs, writing, doing more stuff on websites. So I think the best way to answer that is you can pick the right agency. It doesn't matter what size it is. You'll get a feel for that when if you go for interviews. How do they come across when talking to you? What's their expectation level of you? If it's too high in that early stage, it's not potentially. Unless you go in there and smash it. Which, if you've got the right mentality, you could go and do that. I think I wouldn't say to anybody who's looking to do that type of work to stay away from the big agencies, because you will learn a lot. You'll get a lot more experience hands-on quicker on bigger budgets, but not necessarily, craft. Learn your craft a bit more. It's just more like you say, you could end up being that person that goes, hey, you're the title and description writer.
Yeah.
You don't want that. You want to learn.
I think you tend to see people like, especially graduates, they'll come into these bigger agencies, won't they? And then maybe after like a year or two, that's when they'll go for somewhere smaller for like a senior role, because at least they've they've learned how to do the basics, like you said, and then they want to get a bit more stuck in. But I suppose it's like, it's your personality as well. I mean, mine, I always wanted to try the freelance stuff. the way push on was it was almost like it was like being freelance in the sense of like you were very encouraging for us to try, try doing different things. So it was like that's your client. It's not like, you're like breathing down the back of everyone's neck, like making sure it's all your way. So you had the freedom to like try different things, which, especially in this industry, that's what it's all about as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think SEO specifically, it's not something you can just go to university and learn. It's not regulated to a degree, if you want to call it that. That it's very subjective. Sometimes you can have the same argument coming at it in a completely different angle.
Yeah.
There's not necessarily a right and a wrong. It's my opinion versus your opinion. When you get to a position where you are more senior, you have more steer because you've got more experience. So it's like I always say, any idea is not a bad idea. When we've had content sessions, to try and think about ideas for campaigns, it doesn't matter what it is. Get it down on paper because that could turn into something. And what I would say for new, people looking to get into the industry is, if you are in a group environment, don't sit and be quiet. That's one of the biggest things that when you have these meetings that's supposed to be full of life and you're trying to generate, ideas and think about how you can get a campaign going, silence is deadly, in that sense. It's good to have those silent moments where you're thinking and writing down, and then discussion is great. But, across all different agencies, I've sat in rooms where it goes deadly silent because nobody wants to open up. Again, you find that can happen with people that have just come into roles because you don't want to say the wrong thing. You're never going to say the wrong thing because you're in a room with your colleagues. At the end of the day, that something you may say may not get down in front of the client because it's not the right thing, but that's how you can learn from that and really develop how to work in that environment. And that can, from a freelance point of view, I suppose, as well, it's how you can take that experience to work with different people, because obviously when you're working in an agency, you've got an account team, you've got people that are doing different jobs, different roles. Freelance is a bit more of that. You have to do what you want to do because you haven't got anyone that can tell you it's right or wrong. It's your own instinct to say what piece of work's correct for that client. I think, I suppose, slightly gone off on a tangent, slightly away from where we were on that, but it's giving the freedom, I suppose, to express yourself. Collectively working on something. Like I say, it's this works good, but this is how we can make it better next time, or this is how we'll tweak it to make it better, rather than, yeah, that's great, I'm not sending that. No feedback, no one there to tell you what you've not done, and the reason why it's not done there. It's that you don't learn, I suppose, is the roundabout way to get back. So is if you don't have the right sort of feedback against any piece of work, you're never going to develop. And I'd always say, if you're in an agency, you ask questions. What do you think about this? Why didn't we do that? Or why, let's do the other. Or I don't think we should do that. It's challenging. Is a big thing.
Well, I suppose as well, because you're around, like you said, if you do make it to being freelance, you don't have, unless you're like in a network of other freelancers, you often don't have that luxury. So whilst you're around people, like, why not bounce? And the same with, like, it doesn't have to just be like outreach ideas, absolutely anything to do with what you're working on. Like you said before, you take it to the client, because you might have a great idea and you say it out loud and someone goes, "You being serious?" So,
but I think if you get the right, that can work as, from a freelance, you can reach out to, because you've got a network of people, and you've always got that network of people to just bounce something off. Like, if you are stuck on, let's say you've got a client and the dial isn't moving and you're doing all the right work, but why? Another pair of eyes could have a quick look over it and go, well, did you spot that?
Yeah.
That could be that, So whilst you are freelance or your own business, use your network of people to give you help and advice. Certainly, it's the SEO community I know best because I've been in and around it for many years. There's no real, that's, client versus client headbanging goes on. It does, but, to an extent with the network of people, like when we've been to Brighton SEO, how many times I've been with different companies and different team members, you know a lot of people because you've been around and that's your network. So you always see going, how do you know that person? How do you know that person? And that goes on to the next phase, even from a freelance point of view. Get yourself to conferences and networking events and, broaden. Also, it's opportunity to get business from a freelance point of view because people might need your service.
Yeah.
But, seeing old friends, but also getting out there and learning from the trade and from the people that do it. And, Brighton SEO, I can't speak highly enough of that conference. I've been going every year pretty much since I've been in the industry, and it's been there. That whilst there's a very good social side to it, it is, for certainly people wanting to learn more, get yourself down there and go to as many talks as you can and take in. Become a sponge.
Yeah,
I think without doing, again, going back to how you can progress and push yourself. If you don't put the yards in, then you're not going to learn, and if you don't learn, you can't progress. So.
And I think I said this like before we started. I don't know if this was recording at that point, but like I said, you look at those people, and I mean, obviously not naming names, but there's people in the industry, and whether they mean to make it look this way or not, they can make kind of growing your own business and being, especially like if you're a consultant and you're quite well known, they can even inadvertently make it seem quite easy, where you don't see that 20 years of work behind the scenes that led up to that point. And I think it leads people, I'm susceptible to this. I can feel quite disheartened, like, oh, well, they're doing 30k a month and I've only done 15k. Do you know what I mean? And it's like you start to lose perspective of, well, no, because, you might have been doing it 5 years. They've been doing it 4 times as long as you have. And, I suppose it's the same in any business, but, it can kind of lead people to think, maybe make the wrong decisions or just think that what, freelance or SEO in general is easy. So I think it's just like you said, putting that time in to actually learn the craft before, like, you might have done your own little hobby website and think, right, I'm going to go jump into it now because they, it looks easy because they do it. But like you say, you don't see that work that led up to them getting to that point.
That is, I've done that myself. I tried it, setting up a few websites, to try and do that sort of thing in the background. But you soon find out very quickly you haven't got the time to maintain that unless that's what you want to do for your full-time role. Because at the end of the day, if you're doing that as a side venture, you've got your day job that takes up 7-8 hours of your day. So putting the effort in, if anyone who's thinking of doing the freelance side of thing, you have to put those, as you know yourself, those extra hours. If you don't commit to it, it isn't going to work. It's quite plain and simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, having seen people in the industry, myself for years, going, "Oh, it looks very easy," but no, it's not, because you've got, it's about learning and developing a skill set and understanding that eventually, as you're working through the years, you end up getting people coming to you because you are a trusted sort of resource, or you've been around for enough time that people trust what you do.
Yeah.
So you might get contacted out of the blue by somebody going, "I've got this person needs a bit of help on the website." Okay, yeah, well, that's that person that you go to because I trust them and I know they do it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think that's where, like, probably where the bulk of that sort of stuff comes from, because you see people who are very well known, and a lot of the time they don't even rank for anything, and it's not. I think that's probably a testament as well to like the quality of organic leads that comes through. And it just shows how valuable your network is above anything else, really.
Yeah. As well, from that side of things, and I don't mean this in a discrediting way, you'll probably take work because it's paying you. I think I spoke to you about this in the past. Don't be afraid to put your rates up, because if you've got a good service that's worth that money, people will pay you. It's at the end of the day. That's where you look at, like I say, some of the people that are doing really well, you don't see them visibly around for what you're thinking that you should be found for, because they're actually spending the time getting their money, doing well for the people that pay them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I never looked good when I was a web designer.
Oh, it just froze there. What did you say that last bit?
Oh yeah, it's like when you say someone who's doing a job, you should go, look at them, look at that, look at the other.
Yeah.
When I was doing my web development or web design, my sites that I was doing for myself never looked good. not really a shop window you should be doing, but it's trying to have that, people having the confidence in the work you do for them, keeps you on long term, developments with them. It keeps you with long term relationships, and at the end of the day, if you do a good job for somebody, and they'll keep sticking with you, keep paying you.
And I think it's as well. I know it's different, obviously, if you've got a full-time job and you're just picking up freelance bits on the side. But obviously, for me now, it's not just about ranking in locally or nationally or whatever. Like, you have to be everywhere. It's, doing the YouTube stuff and paid social ads and all that stuff I never thought about beforehand. Yeah. But now it's obviously like, even though you're calling it freelance, it's a business. It's still a business, and you've still got to promote that business, whether that's you or you as an agency or whatever it might be. And I think, that's probably another reason why people might struggle, because they just think that, like, well, they'll go freelance on day one and the leads just come to you. And it's like, well, no, you need to market yourself like you would for any other business then.
Yeah, right. I mean, freelance as a word is obviously you're doing extra by yourself. You've got to a point, you've been doing it long enough now, really. You're running a business. It's your business that you're running, because you can't freelance. You're not really freelancing when you're not working for someone else. You know what I mean? I think the word, freelance is great. Side ventures, if you need that little bit of extra holiday cash, let's say. And for me, I've always sort of had little bits and pieces, but never. Only a couple of times I've considered doing it, but then you've got to look at your commitments. And if you can, maybe one of the times I should have done it, and if you want to say it, bottled out a little bit, because you need security sometimes, and that's one of the. I mean, from your point of view, it's obviously a big leap of faith. If you go, right, I'm quitting that job to go and do my thing now, and if you haven't, and exactly what you're saying now, you're putting more into marketing your business, you're doing more channels, you're looking at different things to get you in front of people, because you're not just relying on waiting for someone to just pass you a lead over because they know that you're freelancing, let's say.
Yeah.
You've got to go out and earn the business, and doing different ways of marketing. It's good to see when you see people that class themselves as freelancers, but really, you're running a business, you've got a turnover, you're doing well.
Yeah.
It's something that, like you say, don't really look at what others are doing. Just concentrate on yourself. Yeah,
and I mean, it's sticking to what works for you, because I probably wouldn't even call it freelance. It's more I run a remote agency, really, because obviously it's not just me now. Just don't have like official employees kind of thing, but it's still people working every month on a network of freelancers essentially. So I mean, for you, I'm guessing you don't seek out freelance work then? It just kind of, again, going back to that network of like people know.
Really, any jobs I get tend to be, I know he can do it, and you've got to trust off that person who's introducing the work. So I actively don't market any of my own stuff. In fairness, I don't want to be massively overly busy after doing work in a day anyway, because I've got, still having a family, and you want to spend time with them. And I've, like I say, a couple of years ago, maybe I had the opportunity to do it, and I chose not to. And that's because I needed the security myself. I didn't feel I could put my family at risk. But sometimes circumstances happen where that's your only option, and go for it. What's the worst that can happen? If it doesn't work, you've got enough expertise from doing it for a few years, you get a job anyway.
Yeah.
It's just those things. But yeah, having sort of getting the leads in come naturally. I have regular work regularising small amounts of it, but just by doing a little bit of support for a site that I worked on 5 years ago. You know, help build their website and put it together, and come to me every so often, need a bit of a change to it, or the analytics doesn't look like it's working, can you take a look for me? You know, smaller jobs like that, but because you've worked with them, they got trust, it just sort of comes a bit naturally.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, get your network of people around you that can give you the leads that potentially, if you know it's too small a job for an agency size, let's say, that the client just doesn't have the budget to pay for that agency, but it's still a reasonable amount for a small business or a freelancer. You know, however way you look at it, you want to be at the other end of that phone from that contact of yours to say, we're turning that down, do you want to have a look at it?
Yeah.
Because that helps to build your portfolio. And then next time you do a good job for that, you can get those referrals again. And, you know, having the right service available for what people want as well. You know, like I say, some people might just want some content writing, some people might just want some outreach doing, some people might just want a site audit. But if you can do a good job on one of those, who's to say they won't come back to you for another piece of work?
Yeah, and then that's where those like white label relationships start then as well, and it's definitely where I'm going towards. Like I said, launch that completewhitelabel.com, and probably good 50% of clients are other agencies at the minute, where it's just, you know, you sign an NDA and they just triple your day rate.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But they don't have a team in place, let's say, to do the work, so they can then just say, right, okay, well, I know that this company can do that for me at that rate, and you make your cream on the top, because, you know, business is business at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And if you're ripping someone off completely, then you've got to stop morally, but that's, you know, it is one of those things that you can reap expertise and benefit from another agency seeking your assistance, but you give them the work and then they deal with the client. So in a way, you've got a little bit of double bubble with it, that you don't have to deal with the client, you're getting paid to do a job, and once you've done the work, they can give you another piece of work and keep you on that roster, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I do reduce rates for agencies because it's, you know, if you do a good job that first month, then obviously, you know, that they're actively getting you clients then, so why would you not just do a discount or whatever? Yeah, I think that's it really on that. I think I just kind of wanted to get your insights on, obviously, you know, speaking to, you know, like newer business owners, and spoke to Simon as well. But thought, you know, there's no one speaking to someone like you where you've done it, you know, almost your own thing, but within agencies as well. I think it's just an interesting angle to get.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I say, the piece of advice I can offer to anyone. Like, you know, we started with how would you get into a position like I've got to by doing the non-freelance route, I suppose. It's working hard and deciding what you want to do, and that progression comes, again, experience is key. You know, you can't just walk into an agency and go, right, I'm going to be the MD. Right, well, you might be in 5 years, but work at it. You know,
Yeah.
No reason why you can't. It's just you've got to work hard and, you know, work with your teams of people and find where you can be the one that people go to give you, you know, that type of work. One of the big piece of advice I can give to people that, you know, when we work with people at Push On, they've come in and done like a year placement, you just eat it up, get as much experience as you can in different departments, because then when you go back to your uni or your college or whatever you're doing, you've actually got a year's experience working in an agency at that point. Then when you finish your course, you'll be taken on, or you've got an opportunity. Then your CV, you know, as long as you end up in the right agency, sometimes it has worked on the opposite side of it, but getting the right, you know, having the right support, that means that when you're going out to market for a job, you've got an attractive skill set and an attractive CV that you've worked for a year in an agency. So realistically, in a bit of a cheeky way, that other agency's paid for your training.
Yeah.
It can work that way. Now, normally, if I get someone in who's come through from, you know, doing a year's placement or 6 months and they're really good, you want to offer them the job because you want to keep them in your business. And again, that shows if you work hard at that, you've got the opportunity to put yourself in the shop window to start essentially your career working in an agency.
Yeah. Cool. All right, we'll end it there.
Yeah, good stuff.
Cheers, Paul.
Nice one.